Hey guys, I hope you guys have been enjoying Overwatch 2. Today I'm going to be talking about something called power positions. You can essentially think of a power position as an OP spot on the map that sort of just gives you generally like a lot of value and sort of gives you like an edge up in the fight. So an example of a power position on Blizzard World is this little area right over here where normally there's a little turret. And normally when you're on this little turret, whether you're the attacking team or the defending team, having, your Hanzo up here or some type of range DPS up here to be able to attack or pressure the enemy team is highly advantageous. I'll give you a few more examples of power positions on a few maps that you guys are familiar with. But after that, I really want to go into Overwatch 2 maps and talk about what places on Overwatch 2 maps are actually like very, very useful and places that are considered power positions and you should be looking to hold. So another example that hopefully you're familiar with is Eichenwald. And on Eichenwald, the spot that most people should hopefully know that you want to hold is just the high ground, right? Like this area right over here. So generally you want to be looking to hold this space. It's very strong. Specifically, this area right over here. These are like the spaces you want to look to hold in the blue specifically. Okay, so now let's look into Overwatch 2 maps and look at what sort of OP on those maps. So now let's dive straight into this map. It's very tricky. There's several different power positions on different points. What I want to explain too is whether you're attacking or defending, the positions still relatively matter. For instance, if a team is defending, they'll look to try and hold this space right over here and apply a lot of pressure on the enemy team, because by holding this space, it essentially allows them to also hold this high ground and this side over here. So the attacking team generally will always want to look to push this side right over here and take control of this, which then allows them to also push here, which then allows them to push around the corner. The next space that is really important, or the power position that you want to be looking to hold, is when you look to push into trying to cap first point, it's actually this high ground right over here. This high ground is very, very strong. Generally, teams will look to push to the side here to get an angle, to start angling on the enemy team. But after this is done, normally you'll want to start putting your range-based DPS or range-based supports up here to be able to start pressuring the enemy team when they're playing this further angle and behind this corner. And the reasoning why this is so critical is because if you look at it like this, this is a corner right here, and if your team is able to aggressively turn this corner, then what ends up happening is your team is able to sort of like, utilize this corner here, and the enemy team essentially does not have a corner anymore. Therefore, it's an open space. And by essentially putting your range-based DPS people on here, they're able to apply a lot of pressure to the defensive team, as well as they're also able to avoid any range-based enemy heroes up here. I apologize. So generally, when you're looking to attack, look to try and take this space and look to hold, over here. When you're looking to defend, it's very similar. You look to sort of still hold this area right over here. Why? Because whenever someone peeks here, you have multiple people who are able to pressure this person, and it inherently becomes very hard for the enemy team to push here because someone's already here. So another example, I'm not going to go too much into it, but is obviously holding this spot right over here. This is very tricky for an attacking team to attack. If you do need to counter this, the best way of going about it is actually hugging the wall and going under. The reasoning is because there's range-based DPS up here. Range-based DPS can't really look down. Another higher level example is once you actually get in here, then what you can do is, you can go in here, and when you're in this underground area, enemy team can't see you, so you can essentially look to push in through here, and then, the enemy team will think you're pushing through here, but what you can actually do is double back and come main, and then look to sort of push around and pinch the enemy team. This isn't exactly related to power positions, but it's sort of how you counter that power position, as well as something called a rotation bait, which I'm not going to go too much into right now. So as we move on to this side, all I'm going to mention here is that when you're pushing here, again, lanes are important. This side here is like pretty strong because you want to be able to angle the enemy team. It's not necessarily a power position. It's just a space that you want to look to try and take when you're attacking. Whereas when you're defending, you want to look to try and push this angle and apply a little bit more pressure over here on this lane. Again, not really a power position by any means. So here, this is where stuff gets interesting. And the main one I want to talk about is this outside area. a lot of people don't fully understand, but when you're sort of attacking here, you really want to, I'm trying to find a good angle here. There we go, we'll use this. You really want to look to control this outside and all of this. And the reasoning is, if you're able to sort of put people over here, the enemy team can push the cart low ground, but when they do that, the people on high ground will start angling them, and you'll essentially win. They can push the cart, and right before they cap, you can drop. The idea is that the enemy team will struggle to shoot up, and you'll be able to shoot up from angles, and you'll do fine. As well as someone can also go around here and start shooting some from behind as well, like flanking Sojourn. So this is if you're defending. Now this is why on attack, it's very important for you to be able to try and clear this so that you don't get angled on. And if you do clear this and the enemy team is forced to play low ground, then you can angle on them and essentially you'll win. If you're not going to do this, at least try and soft contest these angles so it's harder for the enemy team to get value. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much the main power positions on this map. Let's move on to the next one.
No matches? Let's fix that.
Okay, so now we're on Midtown. Let's look at the power positions or OP places to play on Midtown. So this map, honestly, is pretty straightforward. I think a lot of people just struggle because they don't actually know how to get past this choke, and the enemy team sort of just kills them on rotation. And in all honesty, you could always do something like this where you rotate, come all the way here, and then you sort of force point, and that can work. You can sort of look to like play the poke game where you sort of just play over here and poke the enemy team, try and find a pick, and you rotate or you push them. That works too. But the reason why, you know, this needs to happen is because the power position over here is actually holding this like high ground. Holding this is incredibly strong because when you're holding here on defense, you're essentially able to pressure the enemy team on rotation. And this is why the next power position is sort of like, well, sort of on the same point, is if the enemy team does this rotation, you ideally want to have someone maybe on like a high ground or someone sort of roaming sort of back here. So it's not necessarily an area, but it's sort of an angle you need to be covering so that if someone does manage to sort of push across, whether it's, you know, this way or rotates fully around or whatnot, you have some type of angle that you're able to pressure them on. Now, going into second point, I'll be honest, this stuff isn't very complicated. It's sort of obvious if you think about it. The strong place to hold is right over here, whether you're attacking or defending. Why? Because this inherently gives you a lot of options. If you're attacking, you have this option right over here. You're able to go wide. You're able to essentially push angles on the enemy team. If you're defending, well, this also works as well because you're able to push these side lanes where you're able to come over here on this little high ground and angle on people. You're also able to start flanking this way too, and you can also drop on people. So in general, you want to try and control this platform. Please don't be the team that literally plays under here, puts 5 people on a cart beneath, and just pushes under, and gives the enemy team the high ground so they can shoot at you from above. Someone's over here, shoots at you from here. Someone's behind this truck and also shoots at you. That's disastrous. Do not be the team that plays under the bridge, please. Like, you can literally have some mobile person on point and the person can just fly up, or just focus on holding the strongest part of the map and then winning the fight and moving the cart later. Going into the last section of the map, it gets a little bit more interesting, and takes a little bit more, generally, like a little bit more thought, because when you're looking to fight this choke, the enemy team, there's a corner here. There's also another one right over here, and generally, this is sort of how teams look to fight. And when you look at this, where you think about this, when you look at this or think about this a little bit more in depth, you think about this high ground right over here. Whoops, right over here. This high ground gives a lot of value because in this high ground, you're essentially able to shoot the enemy team while they're behind the cover. So being able to have some flanker up here or have someone being able to off angle here and apply early pressure is quite strong. Now, granted, this doesn't really give the attacking team too much value, except that they can sort of pressure a little bit, and then they also don't give the space to you. But it does give the defensive team quite a lot of value. So the idea is to sort of try and abuse this and to pressure the enemy team, as well as if this choke fails, then it's all about controlling the long-term lanes. So what I mean by that is actually being able to sort of control a little bit of this and a little bit of this. If you can control these two lanes and the enemy team is trying to push in wherever, you're also going to look very well because, again, you'll be able to angle on them. You want to be able to play the distance game. You don't need to necessarily just force a brawl. So that's it for this map for Midtown. Let's check out one more. I should have honestly started with Paradiso. It's probably one of my favorite maps to talk about power positions because, in all honesty, this map probably describes the concept I'm talking about the best. There's so many places on this map on each point that just shows, if you hold that spot, you're at a generic advantage. And you might have noticed that I said this is sort of the last map. I didn't want to go into all the push maps because I wanted to see, first of all, if you guys are enjoying this content. If you are, I'm more than happy to go into the push maps and talk about, the power positions, the OP places to play on the maps so you guys can learn more. I also wanted to keep this video sort of short and sweet so you guys can get the general understanding and sort of also learn for yourself as well. So, power positions on this map. Obviously, some teams like to generally hold really close, and that's great. But the fact of the matter is teams are doing this less and less because this isn't that strong, and it doesn't necessarily play for your range-based compositions very well. If you want to play really fast, sure, you can try and execute something like this and put your backline here. And if that's the case, then sure, obviously holding this high ground is very good. But otherwise, this isn't done that much anymore. Most people soft poke here, and they actually generally look to hold this backline. Why? Because what you look to do is you look to set up your backline over here, and they're able to support the enemy. You support your tanks or your DPS. So generally, the place that you're looking to hold is right over here. Or soft hold is this area. And your team, whether it's defending, is looking to support that. The attacking team is looking to try and push this and take it away. And then from there, be able to take space. So this little black area is sort of like the space you want to try and hold as long as you can. It isn't necessarily like a power position, but it's a position that essentially, like, if you lose, it's going to be a little bit harder to push back and take back. Now, going into second point, where stuff gets a bit more interesting, is everything going on with the high ground. So, when you look at this, in my opinion, the power positions for defense are right over here. There's like also sort of this angle right over there, this flank angle. It's these three spots. And the reasoning why is each one of these represents sort of like a section in a lane, each of which normally a flanker can hold and you can angle on somebody. And ideally, you want to be able to hold at least two of the three. Again, you want to hold like 66% of the map. You don't want to give the enemy team other half the map. So you want to hold at least 66% of these. It doesn't matter where you're attack on defense. The goal is to try and be able to push these. If you're attacking, you might look to try and push over here and clear this and push out of here. And then maybe have your Genji try and flank here. If you're defending, you might look to try and have maybe your Genji flank here, your tank play here, and maybe your Sojourn play over here. And this way, again, you're pushing all the lanes. It's also possible that maybe you don't want to push all three lanes at once because it's a little bit hard for your supports to pocket a Genji over here. So maybe you only play for these two lanes, and that's okay too. That just means that you're really going to push the space right over here that enemy team's hopefully playing in. And if the enemy team does rotate and comes over here, then you might look to counter rotate and look to dynamically approach your team so that you can put pressure there. And what I will also mention is as this sort of goes on, the next thing, if you're attacking into this, being able to control this space right over here or deny the enemy team is really crucial. So if you're trying to retake space as you're defending, trying to deny the enemy team from playing up here and shooting you is very good. Whereas the defending team trying to hold this space to give resources to your team is also very good. Like if there's a Winston over here or a Genji, you want to be able to support them. Going into the last portion of the map, and I think this one's fairly obvious, I hope it is, but there are two high grounds here, both of which are quite important. Here, and then there's one right over here. Both of these sort of are essentially the power positions. This is very strong because you're actually able to rotate on the enemy team and push them maybe from behind. Here is also strong because if the enemy team is coming over here, you can pressure them as well. So generally when you're attacking, it's a little bit hard to be able to push up here. So normally your team will push here, and then you maybe have a flanker come in and pinch. So it'll look something like, whoops, let's get the correct colors in here. It'll look something like this. Whereas if you're the defensive team, normally you'll dynamically set up based off where the enemy team is rotating, and then from there you'll pressure. So if the enemy team is coming in here, you'll put your core, the most of your team over here, and you'll have your flanker try and push around and pinch. If the enemy team is coming over here, you'll match it, and then you'll have someone else come over here and pinch. So that's sort of like the general gist of this map, Paraíso, for power positions. I hope this concept makes sense, and I hope you can sort of think about this and apply it to other maps as well. If you are interested in like seeing more about, you know, power positions and understanding them on other maps, just feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm more than happy to go into the push maps as well, as I think those are also very interesting, especially New Queen Street with the train and the 2 high grounds near right after you cap the first point. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.